All right. Hi everybody, my name is Ari Capotis. I am Keystone Fly Girl. If you're looking for any more information about my guide business, I have a standalone website. It's keystoneflygirl.com. I'm here today to show everybody how to tie a Frenchie Nymph. So what we're going to be doing is tying a size 14 Frenchie, okay? And we're going to be utilizing actually like a jig style hook. So you'll see a little better once I have it in the vise, but when it rides in the water, it's going to be riding like this, hook point up, which is great because this is a heavier fly. So the other ingredients that we're going to be using for this Frenchie are going to be listed below in this video, but they are pheasant tail fibers, slotted tungsten bead. We're going to be using silver today. The more traditional color would be gold, but I encourage you to experiment with different bead colors. There's a lot of different colored beads out there. And this is the type of hook that we're utilizing. So this is a size 14 jig style hook from Mustad, and these new cases that they have them in are actually really handy. And I have them stacked up at my fly tying desk. They're stacked just like that, so it's super nice because I don't have to actually page through all my different hooks. The other ingredient that we're going to be utilizing is some gold extra small wire. This is going to be for the body of the fly as well as the pheasant tail fibers. If you're really looking to make this a little heavier, you're more than welcome to wrap some 0.015 lead wraps around the hook shank. I find that I don't really like to be beating the bottom necessarily with my nymphs. If I need to get them a little bit deeper, I'll probably tie on a woolly bugger or something heavier a little bit below, right to the bend of that hook. But let's get started with this fly. We are going to be using a bright fluorescent pink thread for it. We're going to get started right behind the hook bend. Now this is a slotted tungsten bead, so don't be afraid to kind of move it around until it's actually seated the way you want to. You don't need to build a thread dam so it doesn't slide back. If you're partial to building a thread dam behind the hook bead, you're more than welcome to do that. I just don't feel that it's all that necessary for this fly in particular because I can get the pheasant tail fibers nice and tight, and then I do need a little bit of space up here for the thorax, which is going to be the UV scud dub that I have. So I'm tying just a little bit behind the barb of the hook. I'm gonna make a little bit of a thread base going here, okay? Excellent. So the first thing we're going to tie in is the tail, and this is going to be a Frenchie with pheasant tail fibers for the tail. If you wanted to use something a little bit hardier, you're more than welcome to use some Coq de Leon. That CDL is a specialty type of chicken, and for whatever reason the fibers of this chicken's feathers are super hardy. I like the look of the pheasant tail, so that's what we're going to use. As I've said in some other videos that I've done, I kind of view fly tying as adults' arts and crafts, okay? So if it looks good to you and you feel that it fishes just fine for you, you should do it that way. All right, so I'm counting out about 3 or 4 fibers. Especially working with feathers, don't be afraid to kind of rough them up and make sure that they look how you want them to look on the fly. All right, so when I am making tails for my nymphs, I go a little bit on the shorter side. So I like to use them. I like to use my hook gap kind of as a gauge for my nymph tails, but again, I like them on the shorter side, so it's not going to actually be perfectly that length. All right, what I'm going to use are pinch wraps so that I can get this seated correctly. So when I'm coming up like this, I'm actually pinching the thread in between my pointer and my thumb. And then once it's snug, that's when I'm actually going to just wrap like normal, okay? All right, so now what we need to do is tie in a length of the wire. I am fortunate that my fiance actually made me this fly tying board, and I have a measuring tape right in front of me here. It's very helpful for getting the hand of using the appropriate materials for the size hook that you have. You'll get a lot better at it the more that you tie flies, but actually take the time to measure, okay? I only need about 2.5 inches of this gold wire. I have Fisker scissors that I like to use for wire and things along those lines. It's gonna save my nice loon fly tying scissors for actual material such as chicken feathers. So I'm gonna tie in this wire, some pinch wraps to get started. And the nice thing about wire is once you kind of have it tied in a little bit, I can pull that back and snug it up so that I don't have to trim it. So now I'm going to walk this all the way back to about the tail, not quite. All right, and now it's time to actually wrap the body. So what we're going to do is grab about 6 or 8 pheasant tail fibers. And when I'm making the body, I'll just rip those bad boys off. And okay, so see how the tips aren't really uniform, okay? I like to trim the tips. I don't trim a ton of it off, but just a little bit so that I have a little bit more of a uniform tie-in point. See how it's a little bit more even? So, some pinch wraps to get the pheasant tail fibers initially snugged on here, and then I'm gonna actually really start to crank down on them. Awesome. I'm gonna walk my thread up to the bead, pull around my bobbin rest, make sure I don't get an errant thread wrap. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to be spinning the pheasant tail fiber on in one direction, and then I'm actually going to be what's called counter wrapping the wire in the opposite direction. But first things first, we're going to get this pheasant tail fibers on here. So we're going to be spinning back so that we cover most of the thread wraps that have the tail tied in, okay? Once I've done that, I'm gonna start working those fibers forward, and I'm gonna take my time with it. Now, we do need a little bit of a thorax for that UV dubbing to go in, so it's okay to have a little bit of a gap when you're tying in your pheasant tail fibers. All right, now we're gonna trim those, and we're gonna trim them as tight as we can. And we're gonna use the rest for our bobbin. So pull that around, and then pulling that wire up. Now, if you get a little bit too much distance between the tip of your bobbin and where you're tying the thread on, just walk that spool back up, okay? So I'm going to do a couple wraps around the wire just to make sure it's actually secured. And then now I'm going to trim it. There's just enough wire for me to really be able to get my fingers around it, but it's not a huge waste of material. Okay, so we're now almost to the end of the fly. What we need to do is fill in this little gap with some UV scud dub, and we're going to be using a bright pink scud dub. Hairline makes some great dubbings. What we're going to be using here is the hot pink. Now, just like with your makeup, less is more. You don't need a lot of this material. If you use too much, it's just not really gonna give the presentation that we're looking for. So I pulled out a length of thread. I'm grabbing just a little bit of dubbing. I know this doesn't look like a lot, but it's going to actually work beautifully for this size fly. Remember, it's a size 14 hook that we're tying on, so it's not real big. When I'm making this dubbing noodle, I'm gonna make sure that both ends of it are very tight. But I'm also gonna make sure that the middle's snug as well. But the ends are what I'm most concerned with. I like nice tapered ends to my dubbing noodle. I'm now wrapping this around to form the thorax of our Frenchie. And see how I'm snugging up to that bead and now it's not moving? So that's why I don't feel that the thread dam is necessary, because I'm gonna be able to keep it in position using materials. Okay, so we've used just the perfect amount of dubbing, and what we're going to do now is grab our whip finish tool, and we're going to use whip finishes to kind of build up a little bit of a hot spot with the thread behind the head. So that was a 4-turn whip finish. I'm now snugging it up. See how I'm bending the hook? That's how you know if you're actually putting proper tension on the thread. You want to find the happy medium between too much tension that would break the thread and like actually enough tension to cinch down the materials, okay? So I'm a double whip finish gal, so we're gonna do another quad whip finish, snug it up, and then I'm gonna trim it with the back of my dubbing tool. That's looking pretty good to me. Now I do like to kind of grab the dubbing and I'll trim it up a little bit because it'll get roughed up anyway as it's in the water. Because this is a jig style hook and this is how it's gonna be riding in the stream. Up here is where I like to put just a little bit of head cement. What I have in this little dispensing bottle is a little bit of Loon hard head cement, okay? So put the head cement on there. I'm now gonna be using my UV light to get it going. I don't have UV glasses on, so I'm just gonna close my eyes and count to 15. And about good enough. It started to set a little bit on me, so we're all set. So what I would do here, if I was at my fly tying table, is I'd grab a Chick-fil-A cup that I have, and I would stab the rim of that cup. We don't have that, and it's a tungsten bead, so I'm just gonna open up my vise. It'll fall right into my hand. And there we have it, ladies and gents, a finished Frenchie nymph. Thank you.